Intelligence is only the knife. Wisdom is the hand that holds it. This video is about the fundamental difference between intelligence and wisdom. We have a lot of intelligent people. Wisdom is in shorter supply. Intelligence is a tool, a knife. A knife is a good analogy because intelligence is often about analysis. We're cutting into something, dissecting it, so to speak. The question is, what are we cutting? You can use a knife to cut bread or to cut throats. The most glaring example of this is Hitler, who was highly intelligent about knowing what would, let's say, placate or gather the support of the German people at the time of his rise to power, but obviously was not wise. We could also make the analogy of intelligence as a ladder. You put it up against a building, you climb up the ladder, you realize you're on the wrong building. Some people do that in the corporate ladder and find out that that wasn't the building they wanted to climb. Intelligence, in other words, has no value in itself. It is valueless. What has value is how we use intelligence, what we apply it to. This can be learned the hard way through maybe a heart attack or some catastrophe that makes us rethink our values. But we can also appreciate this by turning intelligence back on itself and to appreciate the bigger picture within which our intelligence operates. So this is one of the fundamental things that intellectuals sometimes or maybe even often miss, and that is the phenomenal, unfathomable, beyond imagining complexity of existence. We can have the most meticulously planned ideas, and then we get a migraine. Or this happens, or this doesn't happen. I'm listening to Stephen Ambrose's book about D-Day right now, and here's an operation that was meticulously planned. Just phenomenal. And so many things just went absolutely haywire in the actual execution, so that the soldiers and officers on the ground had to make innumerable, flexible, in-the-moment decisions, adapt, experiment, walk into the unknown. Lots of World War II references today. The point is that the intellect cannot handle complexity, and existence is, if it's anything, complex. We know now that the flapping of a single butterfly's wings in Madagascar can change the course of a storm in California. Imagine the complexity going on inside a single ant. Wisdom recognizes complexity, and it recognizes the inadequacy of the human brain to navigate it. It's really quite simple. Now, that doesn't mean we turn our intelligence off. What it means is we allow our intelligence to be open to guidance from wisdom. Now let's talk about what that guidance is, the nature of it. That guidance tells us where to put our knife blade. Now, I often use the word God, but I may as well use the word dog. I don't want to put people off. I kind of like using the word because I like the idea of trying to reclaim it from dogmatic, fundamentalist, severe notions of the word. But I know that puts some people off. You could call it the higher self, but I'm sure that also puts some people off. So I'm going to call it the higher elf. Maybe that's my favorite, because when we think of the word God guiding us, we tend to think of trumpet blasts and choirs of angels and the sky splitting open and saying, "Chris, go do this now." But this is actually not how the sacred or the divine or the higher elf tends to speak to us. To imagine that God speaks that way is to simply push God away. It is to make God irrelevant and then to say God is irrelevant. If you reimagine the divine or the sacred as speaking to us in every moment, how? Through intuition, through urges and nudges and whispers and paths of least resistance and going with the flow, then we can actually bring God or dog into our life in a meaningful way. And this is the key to navigating through this unfathomable mystery of complexity that every one of us is in, and that none of our brains can figure out. So the idea is that our intuition can guide us. And not just our intuition, but our excitement, our enthusiasm, our enjoyment, our bliss, as Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. And then you can use your intelligence on that journey. Then you can put your ladder where Jacob put his ladder. Wisdom, in other words, speaks in the moment. It adapts to the moment. It can't be encapsulated in a formula or an abstract intellectual statement. It simply accepts that we are in a new moment in every moment. We're never anywhere else. So in this sense, wisdom is humble. It's always open. It's open to the moment. And it's highly intelligent because every moment has different circumstances. So what's appropriate in one moment or with one person is not appropriate in another moment with another person. Wisdom is humble in this way. It doesn't try to encapsulate the universe in a formula, nor does it impose on anyone else. But wisdom is also bold in the sense that you actually must accept that you have a direct connection to God. And that's bold. We may have this reaction to someone saying, I have a direct connection to God, as that being arrogant. And that's only to the extent that we imagine that person will then impose themselves on us. But God speaks to you. God doesn't give directions to other people through you. And we serve best as examples when we follow our own guidance. One last thing is that we may associate intelligence with seriousness and solemnity. But wisdom is playful, because that open-endedness in the moment is a space for playfulness. When we're solemn, that's like trying to grip the totality of existence in some frozen idea. Solemnity is restriction. Wisdom is openness. And so wisdom is playful. Jesus said, unless you can be like this little child, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus, by the way, spoke for this connection to the higher self. He called it my Father in heaven. And he never said, I'm the only one that has this. It's quite the opposite. He said, the kingdom of God is within you. You all have this connection. Jesus was just an example of someone who firmly knew and lived out a life in connection with his higher self. And that doesn't mean that if we do that, our lives become like Jesus and we walk around in sandals and die on a cross. Why would we be born to imitate someone that lived 2,000 years ago, or imitate anyone? So be intelligent by all means, but be deliriously intelligent. And stay in school and eat your vegetables and kick a field goal and buy tomatoes and rearrange your furniture, and also make sure that you ignore everything I say unless you like it.